Welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this week's episode, Dal Chodha reads from his book You Gotta Keep Your Head Straight About Clothes, An Appreciation of Cheap Chic, the first consumer guidebook to thrift store shopping, published in New York in 1975.
Your look should be in harmony with the way you live, who you are, and not reflect what the fashion magazines or even we say, Cheap Chic's introduction declares. Similarly exhausted by fashion skittishness, I am today gripped by the things that purposefully, stupidly slip through the net. The things no one has scanned and put online. The books sold off by libraries, the jumper after it shrunk, the Shelley Winters film that some freak has uploaded to YouTube, a fuzzy clip of Elizabeth Taylor wearing an enormous putty-coloured bra screeching, "Who asked you for a stain-resistant dress?" Betty Kirk meeting the 98-year-old Vionnet, Josephus T. Mister's Balenciaga, the not quite infamous, the two-season success story, the designer who thought, fuck this, I'm going to go and do something else, and a fashion Bible lost to time. My battered first edition copy of Cheap Chic cost me £77.09. In the chapter First Layers, the authors speak of pragmatism, ease, comfort. They talk about a style that seems anti-fashion in its utilitarianism, oftentimes a style willingly misunderstood as joyless. But in the basics, you can remain anonymous, observe and stalk the life you're after in a quiet and individual style, they say. How can you miss with solid colours, quality, simple cut and time-tested design, a pair of jeans, a cotton t-shirt, a leotard and other stretchy things? In the chapter Classics, Cheap Chic advises that some people might not be able to spend money on, say, a tweed rifling jacket, yet the authors remain steadfast in the promotion of buying less and buying better. By 1975, the idea that blind consumption was going to inevitably wreck the planet, including the humans that live on it, was growing. On page 35 of Cheap Chic, the designer of the sensational mid-60s monokini, Rudi Gernrich, says, "It has been pounded into your head that because of America's overproduction ethic, it's unthinkable for someone to have just one pair of pants. Perhaps that's all you need." Classic has become confused with a kind of expense, but a pair of jeans can be as classic as a Chanel dress. Cut the legs in summer to make shorts, in the winter open the seams and set in a piece of denim to make a long warm skirt. So Cheap Chic advises. Although classics are timeless, there's always a new way of wearing them, Vogue's 1970 shopping column more dash than cash instructed. We ought to seek a fashion, a style that is ordered, opulent chaos, that lets you get on with being a real living person. Part memoir, part memorandum. The mood in Cheap Chic is sensible and spectacular. One editor instructs us on her cost per wear system, which means that her much-loved Yves Saint Laurent crepe de chine narrow pleated skirt has thus far worked out to only 15 cents per wear. Troy and Millionaire encourage women to start dressing to please themselves, to gather the right elements to get a personal style going. The freedom is what's fun. In Cheap Chic, they present a mission to track down a store in your city that sells a good basic t-shirt. Troy and Millionaire suggest that women buy a bolt of flimsy cloth and work with their body, their imagination. Think about what you've already got. I don't shop if the moment is right. I know it. If the thing, the money and I are all together, that's my cue. Nancy Crow, an employee in a New York publishing house, tells us on page 99. I think you've got to keep your head straight about clothes, she says. Born in Paris in 1942, Catherine Millionaire moved to London in the 60s to cover what was then known as young fashion for British high society magazine Queen. Millionaire then went to New York in 1965 to work as a fashion editor at American Vogue under Diana Vreeland's stewardship, tasked with the same job of focusing on the youthful. In hurried dispatches to her team, Vreeland advises on the delicious coquetry of freckles, hails Barbarella as an amazing example of the girls we believe in, and asks that everyone take note of a pink straw polo helmet with a gold chain. Vreeland's was an operatic campaign of style. On the 18th of March 1970, as Vreeland was most likely dictating a memo about artificial fur boots, activists in the women's liberation movement staged an 11-hour protest inside the offices of the Ladies' Home Journal, a magazine focused squarely on traditional femininity, family, fashion and food, only amplified the stresses and miseries of women, the protesters said. At that point, the Ladies' Home Journal was the second most read women's magazine in the country. It was owned and operated by men. The protesters wanted all of the magazine's staff to be replaced. I like to imagine Troy and Millionaire raiding thrift shops in the East Village for good army fatigues whilst the protest unfolded. That they were in the same city and working in magazines at the same time no doubt shaped the feminist thinking, working, motherhood, money saving that we find throughout Cheap Chic. Cheap Chic graphic designer, the formidable and dynamic Bea Feitler, had been the first art director on Gloria Steinem's trailblazing Ms. magazine. Cheap Chic takes its cues from the madcap wisdom proffered in Vreeland's aristocratic, campy Why Don't You column for Harper's Bazaar, combined with a genuine desire to inform people of how to deal with clothes outside of the organised fashion system. Cheap Chic is a remarkable time capsule of a changing mood, not just because it urged women to be more economic with the time they spend, or indeed waste, thinking about clothes, but in its lobbying against needless seasonal consumption and knackered trends. Similarly, today the routine pleas for us to mend, repair and clean carefully what we already own. Fashion editors who have for so long promoted the new over the knowing, the sanitized over the storied, are filling websites, Instagram feeds and the printed page with hyperbolic advice on how to avoid buying things. In 2022, Harper's Bazaar volunteered a list of luxury repair services under the title The Restoration Revolution. Repairing your clothes can be a revolutionary act, the sustainable fashion activist Orsola de Castro stated when promoting her book Loved Clothes Last. The January 2020 issue of British Vogue gallantly mixed new season clothes with old favourites, whilst in New York an editor remixed her closet to attend the biannual orgy of international fashion shows. These missives position the language of grassroots activism alongside the glossiest seasonal campaigns.
Now on BBC One, Trinny and Susanna going soft and romantic? Nah, didn't think so.
The most exacting of all my lessons about fashion wasn't administered at Central St Martin's, where, squeezed onto a creaking wooden staircase, I was lectured about the emotional range of a rotting cotton skirt. It was on BBC Two on Thursday evenings. What Not to Wear first aired in 2001, the year I moved to London, and it was fronted by implacably posh friends Trinny Woodall and Susanna Constantine. 2 decades on, and I'm still conflicted by its blend of matronly harassment and gung-ho high camp. What Not to Wear was billed as a reality show with a cunning empowerment MO. It borrowed all of the honeyed overfamiliarity of British daytime television cookery shows and sprinkled it with the brushy oomph of MTV Cribs. It presented the bleak truth of fashion as something eternally wedged somewhere between self-hate and self-worship. What Not to Wear was what my generation got instead of Cheap Chic. In the same way that Troy and Millionaire challenged women to study themselves in the mirror, Woodall and Constantine coerced their willing targets to make peace with whoever greeted them in the looking glass. Susanna and I are just two middle-aged women who just want to help, Woodall told The Observer in 2002. If Cheap Chic is about accepting the individual self, What Not to Wear makes pains to show us how to disguise it. Woodall and Constantine established a cult dogma designed to improve life with rules and regulations, which post the millennium had everything to do with body correction. What Not to Wear told women how to get things, their looks and their bodies, right. In each episode, a guest protagonist is nominated by so-called friends and wary sisters and mums who are fed up with their friend, sister, daughter dressing under par. The opening scenes always show our magisterial teachers, Trinny and Susanna, curled up on large avuncular sofas located somewhere inside a penthouse that's casting a shadow on the River Thames. The all-seeing London eye is never far away. Constantine, with brassy yellow highlights, fills the entire left hand of the screen, pursing her lips as she plummily intones a poisonous nugget. For some, coordination is a difficult concept to grasp. Her face cascades out of focus to reveal the unbreakable, elongated Woodall trying to raise an eyebrow, beaming, "Truth hurts," and we're not adverse to administering a little bit of pain. Armed with plastic folders stuffed with evidence of sartorial solecisms, they perfume the air with discontented whimsy. Fagger, boozer, slob, Constantine scoffs, safe in the Narnia of pre-Twitter television making. What follows is a 28-minute masterclass in how fashion can empower and petrify at once. The whole point is to have fun, to experience something you've always wanted to do but have never had the rules or information to do it with, Woodall reminds us. A woman is placed into the dreaded 360-degree mirror chamber, wearing first her own hideous clothes, then just her off-white underwear. Her soft tummy is prodded, her tits praised and slapped. A single gold Prada sandal is wedged onto an unwilling left foot. They chastise Liz, a 30-year-old administrative supervisor from Aldershot, for masking her great figure and banish the wearing of any colour against black. In Trinian tones, is right if it suits you. With its clipped camaraderie and capitalist chutzpah, What Not to Wear commits to the notion of self-improvement as an act of bolshy benevolence. Each of us dresses for one another. On the show, rules are displayed on headless, naked mannequins and an envelope of £2,000 cash thrust into a clammy, hopeful hand. Once, a mission to find a skirt that, oh my God, goes below the panty line was issued. Often, a declaration that the tummy area is bettered by wrap tops. Scarves are ideas. A wedge is less tottery than a heel. Later, work colleagues, friends, and even local children sit in judgment after a prodigal shopper returns from Debenhams, House of Fraser, and Kukai. I remember vividly the excitement I would feel at watching our rebooted maiden strut into her cluttered sepia office wearing bright two-button jackets with polished accessories, which she would then test at a branch of All Bar One. The secret to happiness, we learned, was a new 3-colour shag and a skinny metallic scarf. The emphasis on getting acquainted with what looks back at you in the mirror is a central tenet of Cheap Chic too. In the introduction, we learn it isn't important if your breasts, hips or legs aren't those you would see in a fashion magazine or in the pages of Playboy. What matters is that you get acquainted with them as they are and treat them with care and respect. What Not to Wear is Cheap Chic drained of its cheer. It is a burlesque of boobs and bulges that need attention. The healthy, lively body that Cheap Chic urges us to cultivate in its introduction has become lumpy and unruly. Woodall and Constantine shove it into shape with wide belts from Dorothy Perkins, knee-high boots from Dolcis, and generous Marks & Spencer bras. The climax of every episode of What Not to Wear is a return to the mirror. We see a woman examining what is hopefully a totally new person. We become, as the all-pervading art critic John Berger put in his influential and inescapable 1972 book and BBC series Ways of Seeing, the men looking at women who are watching themselves being looked at. A tight skirt isn't really practical in this era of constant movement. I am drawn to writing and talking about clothes that express a complicated interior life over the all-too-easy distraction of aesthetic jamboree. The clothes that interest me and the approach Troy and Millionaire promote reinforce the difference between the organised machine of fashion and the grittier, more liquid idea of style. In many ways, Cheap Chic is an approach shaped by a 70s American white feminist gaze. In a million ways, it was never written for me, yet it endures as a lexicon of what I think clothing can mean. If we consider the philosopher Michel de Certeau's idea of reading as an act of wandering through an imposed system, then Cheap Chic is an A to Z that exists both in opposition to and in harmony with fashion's ironies.
She'll change her life. Transformation could be quite dramatic with her.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then we've got Lufa and...
To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.